Tributes for the late Bee Gee, Maurice Gibb, are being overshadowed tonight by family anger.
Most people remember the Bee Gees for their high voices and disco hits, but behind those famous songs stood a quiet man who held everything together. His name was Maurice Gibb, and at age 52, he told the world something that surprised everyone. There was one song he could never listen to without crying. This is his story. Maurice Ernest Gibb came into the world on December 26. Right from the start, these two boys were different sides of the same coin. Robin was the serious one. Maurice was the one who made everyone laugh. Their father Hugh was a drummer and band leader. Their mother Barbara loved music too. So when the family moved to Manchester, England, music filled their small house. Barry, the oldest brother, got his first guitar when he was 9. Soon Robin and Maurice wanted to play too. The boys started singing together in their living room. Barry would play guitar. Robin had a voice that could hit high notes. And Maurice, he could play anything: guitar, bass, piano, drums. If it made music, Maurice figured out how to use it. In 1958, when Maurice was just 8 years old, the family packed up and moved to Australia. They settled in Redcliffe, a small town near Brisbane. It was there that three brothers would start something that would change their lives forever. The name came from Barry Gibb, Bee Gees, Bee Gees. Simple as that. In Australia, the three brothers started playing at local shows. Maurice was 11 years old, still learning how to hold a bass guitar properly. Their first real break came when they met Bill Good, a race car driver who also promoted shows. He liked what he heard and became their manager. Soon the Bee Gees were playing clubs around Brisbane. Maurice stood in the back, playing bass and watching his brothers fight for the spotlight. Because that's what Barry and Robin did. They fought. Barry wanted to be the leader. Robin thought he was the better singer, and Maurice, he just wanted everyone to get along. Even as a kid, he was the one who kept the peace. In 1963, they recorded their first song. It was called The Battle of the Blue and the Gray. Maurice was 13 years old. He played bass, arranged the harmonies, and made sure everything sounded right. Already, he was becoming the glue that held the group together. But Australia was just the beginning. In 1967, the family decided to go back to England. The boys were older now. Barry was 20, the twins were 17. They had bigger dreams and knew they needed to be in London to make them real. London in 1967 was the center of the music world. The Beatles were at their peak, the Rolling Stones were everywhere, and three brothers from Australia were about to join the party. They met Robert Stigwood, a manager who believed in their sound. He got them a record deal with Polydor Records. Their first British single was called New York Mining Disaster 1941.
Have you seen my wife, Mr. Jones?
Radio stations loved it. People thought it might even be a secret Beatles song. Maurice was thrilled. At 17, he was living in London, making records and playing music with his brothers. But he was also learning that success came with a price. Barry and Robin's fights were getting worse. They would argue about everything: who sang lead, who wrote what, how the song should sound. Maurice became the referee. He would calm Barry down when he got angry. He would talk Robin through his moods. He kept the band together when it should have fallen apart. Their breakthrough came in 1967 with To Love Somebody. The song showed what the Bee Gees could really do: beautiful melodies, tight harmonies, and Maurice's solid bass holding everything together. But even bigger success was coming.
To love somebody, to love somebody.
In 1968, they recorded I Gotta Get a Message to You.
Just gotta get a message to you.
And I Started a Joke.
I started a joke, which started the...
Both songs hit the top of the charts around the world. Maurice was 18 years old and already part of one of the biggest bands on the planet. But fame brought new problems. The constant touring was exhausting, the pressure to write hits never stopped, and Barry and Robin's relationship was getting worse every day. In 1969, everything exploded. Robin decided he wanted to go solo. Barry was furious. They had screaming matches that ended with doors slamming and threats to quit. Morris was stuck in the middle, trying to save something that might not want to be saved. Robin left the band. For a while, it looked like the Bee Gees were finished. Barry and Morris tried to keep going as a duo, but it wasn't the same. The magic was in the three voices together, not apart. Morris later said this was one of the hardest times of his life. His brothers weren't speaking to each other. The music, the thing they all loved most, had become a battleground, and Morris felt responsible for fixing everything. But sometimes the best thing you can do is wait. By 1970, Robin was ready to come back. His solo career wasn't. When they reunited, something had changed. They were older, maybe a little wiser. They had learned that they needed each other. The Bee Gees were back together, and Morris made sure they stayed that way. The early 1970s brought steady success. The Bee Gees had hits like How Can You Mend a Broken Heart and Run to Me. Morris was playing more instruments than ever: bass, guitar, keyboards, even mellotron. He was the musical director, making sure every song sounded perfect. But their biggest change was still coming. In 1975, they started working with producer R.F. Martin in Miami. The sound they created there would make them legends. It started with Jive Talkin'. Barry sang in a higher voice than before, that famous falsetto that would define their disco years. Robin added his distinctive harmony, and Morris provided the rhythm that made people want to dance. Then came Saturday Night Fever. The 1977 movie needed a soundtrack, and the Bee Gees were asked to write songs for it. They went into the studio and came out with magic. Stayin' Alive. How Deep Is Your Love? Night Fever. These weren't just songs, they were anthems. Morris was 27 years old and at the top of the world. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack spent 24 weeks at #1. The Bee Gees were the biggest band on the planet. Everyone wanted to sound like them, but Morris was also struggling in ways no one could see. While millions of people were dancing to Bee Gees songs, Morris was drinking, a lot. The pressure of constant touring, endless interviews, and being in the spotlight was crushing him. He started using alcohol to cope. His marriage to singer Lulu had already ended in 1973. Now he was married to Yvonne Spenceley, and their relationship was suffering. Morris would come home drunk after recording sessions. He would miss family dinners because he was passed out. The man who held the band together was falling apart himself. Yvonne later said she barely recognized the man she married. The funny, gentle Morris was disappearing behind a wall of alcohol. Their children, Adam and Samantha, were seeing their father at his worst. The worst part was that Morris was good at hiding it. In interviews, he would joke and laugh. On stage, he would smile and play perfectly. Fans thought he was the happiest Gibb brother. They had no idea he was drowning. By 1981, Yvonne had enough. She took the kids and moved out. Morris was alone in their big house, drinking himself into oblivion every night. The man who had spent his whole life keeping his family together was watching his own family fall apart. The early 1980s were dark years for Morris. The Bee Gees' popularity was fading, disco was dead, and people were tired of their high voices and dance beats. Radio stations wouldn't play their new songs. Their concerts were half empty. Morris's drinking got worse. He would show up to recording sessions drunk. He would forget lyrics on stage. His brothers were worried, but they didn't know how to help him. The wake-up call came in 1987. Morris had been drinking for days straight. He called Barry in the middle of the night, crying and incoherent. Barry rushed over and found Morris passed out on his kitchen floor. That's when the family knew they had to do something. In the early 1990s, Morris finally got help. He checked into rehab and spent months learning how to live without alcohol. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, harder than any song he had ever recorded. When he came out, he was a different man. Sober Morris was the old Morris again, funny, gentle, and kind. He worked to win back Yvonne and his children. Slowly, carefully, he rebuilt his life. Yvonne agreed to try again. The kids started spending more time with their father. Morris threw himself into music with a clear head and a grateful heart. He said later that sobriety saved his life, but clarity came with a price. Without alcohol to numb his feelings, Maurice felt everything more deeply, and that's when certain songs started to hurt in ways he couldn't handle. Andy Gibb was the baby of the family, born in 1958 when Maurice was 9 years old. While his older brothers were becoming famous, Andy was growing up in their shadow. But he had talent too, maybe more than any of them. In the late 1970s, while the Bee Gees were conquering disco, Andy was starting his own career. Barry helped him write and produce his first songs. I Just Want to Be Your Everything hit #1 in 1977, did the same thing a year later. Andy was gorgeous, charming, and talented. He seemed destined for superstardom, but fame hit him like a truck. He started using drugs. He couldn't handle the pressure of being compared to his famous brothers. He began making bad decisions with worse people. Maurice watched his baby brother spiral out of control. He tried to help. He would call Andy every day. He would fly to wherever Andy was performing just to check on him. Maurice felt responsible for protecting Andy, just like he protected Barry and Robin. But Andy was slipping away. The drugs got worse. His career stalled. His relationships fell apart. By the mid-1980s, Andy was broke, addicted, and broken. On March 10, 1988, Andy Gibb died of heart failure. He was just 30 years old. The drugs had finally caught up with him. Maurice was devastated. He felt like he had failed his little brother. At the funeral, Maurice could barely speak. He kept saying he should have done more, should have tried harder, should have somehow saved Andy. That's when the music started hurting. After Andy died, Maurice found that certain songs were impossible to listen to. Andy's hits would come on the radio, and Maurice would have to turn them off. The memories were too painful, but there was one song that hurt more than all the others. In 1989, the Bee Gees recorded a ballad called Wish You Were Here. It was their way of talking to Andy, of saying goodbye to the brother they couldn't save. Robin sang lead vocals, but Maurice arranged all the harmonies. Every chord, every background vocal, every musical decision carried his grief. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. When they performed it live, fans noticed that Maurice would often step back from his microphone. His hands would shake slightly on his bass guitar. Sometimes his eyes would fill with tears. The man who never broke was breaking, right there on stage. Years later, Maurice admitted that Wish You Were Here was the song he couldn't get through without crying. Every time they played it, he saw Andy's face. Every note reminded him of the brother he couldn't protect. But there was another song that haunted Maurice even more. It was written long before Andy died, but it felt like a prophecy of all the loss that was coming. Maurice and Robin were twins, born just 35 minutes apart. They had shared everything. A bedroom as children, their first guitar lessons, their first taste of fame. Being a twin created a bond that other people couldn't understand. In 1969, the Bee Gees recorded a song called Don't Forget to Remember. Robin sang lead vocals, and it became a hit around the world. But for Maurice, the song carried a different weight. The lyrics about memory and loss felt too real, too close to home. As Maurice got older, Don't Forget to Remember became harder and harder to hear. He told friends that it made him think about losing Robin, about what would happen if his twin brother died first. It was a fear that lived in the back of his mind, growing stronger with each passing year. When the Bee Gees would slip this song into their concert sets in the 1990s, fans noticed that Maurice's voice would catch on the background vocals. He wasn't the lead singer, but somehow he carried the emotional weight of the entire song. At age 52, Maurice finally talked about this in an interview. He said there were two songs he couldn't listen to without breaking down. Wish You Were Here was for Andy, but Don't Forget to Remember was about his deepest fear, losing Robin. It was a confession that revealed the tender heart behind the steady bass player. Maurice had spent his whole life taking care of everyone else, but some fears were too big even for him to handle. The late 1990s and early 2000s were good years for Maurice. He was sober, his marriage was strong, and his relationship with his children had healed. The Bee Gees were touring again, playing their classic songs for fans around the world. Maurice had found peace with his role in the band. He wasn't the frontman like Barry. He wasn't the dramatic artist like Robin. He was the foundation, the steady hand that kept everything working, and he was proud of that. He started several businesses outside of music. He collected cars, especially vintage Bentleys. He loved spending time at his home in Miami, working in his garden and playing with his grandchildren. Life was good. The Bee Gees were even talking about making a new album. They had been working on songs in Barry's home studio. Maurice was excited about the creative process, about making music with his brothers again. Maurice's body was sending him warning signs. He had been having stomach problems for months. Sometimes the pain would double him over. He would joke about it, saying he was getting old. His family urged him to see a doctor, but Maurice kept putting it off. He didn't want to worry anyone. He didn't want to slow down the band. He was Maurice Gibb. He was supposed to be the one who took care of problems, not the one who had them. On January 9, 2003, Maurice went to bed feeling full. 2 days later, his world would end. Maurice woke up on January 11, 2003, in terrible pain.
Just gotta get a message to you.
Barely able to speak, she called 911 immediately. Paramedics rushed Maurice to Mount Sinai Medical Center. Doctors quickly discovered the problem. His intestine had twisted, cutting off blood flow. It was serious, but it was treatable. Surgery was scheduled right away. Yvonne called Barry and Robin. The family gathered at the hospital, worried but not panicking. Maurice was only 53 years old. He was strong. He would get through this like he had gotten through everything else. Barry held vigil in the waiting room. Robin paced the halls. Yvonne sat by Maurice's bedside before the surgery, holding his hand. Maurice was scared, but he tried to joke with the nurses. Even in pain, he was trying to make other people feel better. The surgery began in the afternoon. Doctors worked to repair the twisted intestine. At first, everything seemed to be going well, but then something went wrong. Maurice's heart stopped. The medical team worked frantically to bring him back. They used every technique they knew, but Maurice's heart wouldn't restart. After 45 minutes, they had to give up. Maurice Gibb was pronounced dead at 1:30 p.m. on January 12, 2003. The man who had held the Bee Gees together for over 30 years was gone. News of Maurice's death spread quickly. Within hours, fans were gathering outside the hospital, lighting candles and singing Bee Gees songs. Radio stations around the world played tribute sets. The internet was flooded with memories from fans who had grown up with his music. Paul McCartney said Maurice was a lovely guy and a great musician. Elton John called him one of the finest musicians I've ever known. Diana Ross, who had recorded with the Bee Gees, said Maurice was a gentle soul with incredible talent. But the most heartbreaking reactions came from his family. Barry was devastated. He told reporters, "I can't imagine being on stage without him." Robin said simply, "Maurice was the glue. Without him, there is no Bee Gees." Yvonne was too overcome with grief to speak publicly for days. Their children, Adam and Samantha, both in their 20s, had lost their father just when their relationships with him were at their strongest. The funeral was held on January 15, 2003, at St. Mary's Catholic Church in Miami Beach. Hundreds of mourners attended, including music industry legends and ordinary fans who had been touched by Maurice's music. And then something happened that would have broken Maurice's heart all over again. During the service, they played "Wish You Were Here," the song he had said he couldn't listen to without crying. The song written for Andy had become Maurice's farewell. Barry and Robin tried to continue as the Bee Gees, but it wasn't the same. Barry later said he couldn't sing for months after Maurice died because he kept hearing his brother's harmonies in his head. When he finally returned to performing, fans could see the sadness in his eyes. Robin struggled too. At tribute concerts, he would try to perform "Wish You Were Here" and break down mid-song. The loss of Maurice had left a hole that couldn't be filled. In 2009, Barry officially retired the Bee Gees' name. He said it wouldn't be right to continue without Maurice. The band that had started with 3 brothers in Australia was finished. Robin continued to perform solo until his own death in 2012. He died of cancer at age 62, leaving Barry as the last surviving Bee Gees brother. The song that had frightened Maurice, "Don't Forget to Remember," had become prophetic. He had indeed lost his twin, though he wasn't there to see it happen. Today, Maurice Gibb is remembered as one of the most underrated musicians in popular music history. While Barry got credit for the songwriting and Robin for the distinctive voice, Maurice was the one who made it all work. He played multiple instruments, arranged the harmonies, and kept the sound tight and professional. Music experts now recognize that Maurice was the musical director of the Bee Gees. He understood how all the pieces fit together. Without him, the songs wouldn't have had the same impact. But Maurice's real legacy isn't just musical. He showed what it means to be the glue that holds a family together. He sacrificed his own spotlight to make his brothers shine. He battled his demons and won. He loved deeply and grieved honestly. The songs that broke him, Wish You Were Here, and Don't Forget to Remember, are now cherished by fans around the world. They represent Maurice's humanity, his capacity for love and loss. They remind us that even legends have breaking points. When people listen to Bee Gees music today, they're hearing Maurice's contribution in every song. His bass lines, his harmonies, his arrangements, they're all still there, still holding everything together just like he did in life. At age 52, Maurice Gibb made a confession that surprised the world. He admitted there were songs he couldn't listen to without crying. For a man who had always been seen as unshakable, it was a moment of raw honesty. Wish You Were Here broke him because it carried Andy's ghost. Every time the Bee Gees performed it, Maurice was saying goodbye to his baby brother all over again. The guilt of not being able to save Andy never left him. Don't Forget to Remember broke him because it represented his deepest fear, losing Robin. As twins, they shared a bond that went beyond music. The thought of life without his twin brother was almost unbearable. These confessions revealed the truth about Maurice Gibb. Behind the jokes and the steady bass lines was a man who felt everything deeply. He carried the weight of his family's pain along with his own. He was the caretaker, the peacemaker, the one who held everyone together even when he was falling apart inside. Maurice died before he could see his fear about Robin come true. In a way, that was a mercy. He never had to face the loss that terrified him most. But his confession about these songs became part of his legacy, a reminder that strength and vulnerability can exist in the same person. Today, when Wish You Were Here plays, fans think of both Andy and Maurice. When Don't Forget to Remember comes on the radio, people remember Maurice's fear and Robin's later death. These songs have become memorials to the Gibb brothers, who are gone. Maurice once said, "Music is what keeps us together." He was right. Even though he's been gone for over 20 years, his music still brings people together. His bass lines still make people dance. His harmonies still make people sing along. The songs that broke Maurice Gibb in life are the same songs that keep his memory alive today. Every time they play, he's there in the background, holding everything together, just like he always did. That was Maurice's gift, not just to his brothers or his family, but to the world. He showed us that being the quiet one doesn't mean being the weak one. He proved that sometimes the most important person in the room is the one you barely notice. Maurice Gibb was the heart of the Bee Gees, and hearts, as he knew better than anyone, are made for breaking and mending over and over again. His broke for Andy, feared breaking for Robin, and finally stopped beating in a Miami hospital room. But the music he made, that steady, solid, unshakable music that will never break, it will keep playing, keep bringing people together, keep holding everything in place, just like Maurice always did.